kind of like kind of good. Sorry.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Looks like we're having some technical difficulties already. My name is Victor Lemus. I'm a senior at Metropolitan State University of Denver. I'm computer engineering. And this is me on the Green River, and my mom also there on the Green River. When I was in high school, I had the great privilege of going on these week-long river trips where you camp out on the banks and you go down the river during the day. And really, this was thanks in part to my adopted grandparents, Don and Betty. Don and Betty had this tradition of getting together with friends every year to reconnect. And yeah, so it very much became my tradition. And even if we are unaware about it, water brings this sense of being to us through our interactions with, and it connects us to our loved ones and to one another, right? So when we talk about what's happened to the Southwest in the last 22 years, we're really doing people a disservice when we use the word drought. Drought implies a temporary condition, and what we've experienced in the last 22 years is a consistent and permanent change to our water supply. What will continue to happen is a lower availability of water, so our interaction with water needs to change. Let's look at Colorado's demand and future risk. Municipal use is use that you use in your home, yards, small businesses, and small sectors like hospitality and restaurants. This is a business as usual projection. As our population grows to about 8.5 million by 2050, we can expect a gap, a municipal gap that's consistent. To get a better context of that number, an acre foot can be thought of as the size of a football field without the end zones about a foot deep. A different way we can look at it is 1 acre foot of water can supply roughly 5.5 Coloradans for 1 year. So what is water loss? Water loss is really an umbrella term. It's water that has been produced and is lost before it reaches the customer, right? But when water providers start looking at water loss management, they see water loss as a loss in revenue. And so it's broken down into these 3 separate categories. Apparent losses are non-physical losses. They're losses that occur on paper. They are due to customer meter inaccuracies, systematic billing errors, and unauthorized consumption. Real losses are the physical losses of water from the distribution system. This includes breaks, leaks, and storage overflow. The last is authorized losses. These are losses that are authorized but not billed. For example, firefighters, when they use water, it's authorized but not billed. So now that we understand what water loss is in terms of how the water provider sees it, how much water loss occurs within distribution systems? How much loss occurs within between point A and point B? Point A being the treatment facility, point B being your home. Roughly 76,000 acre feet. That's enough water to serve 413,000 Coloradans for 1 year. The EPA estimates that public water systems lose an average of 1/6 of their water. If we take a look at it from that estimate, the number would be closer to 150 acre feet in Colorado. And that's enough water to serve roughly 850,000 Coloradans. That's certainly more water. That's certainly more than enough water to provide all of Denver County. The Colorado Water Loss Initiative program here in Colorado took on 56 water utilities. And from that small sample, they calculated that 22,000 acre feet was lost. So in truth, the amount of water in Colorado is unknown because very few providers conduct water audits to measure their water loss. And so what can we do about that? We can mandate validated annual reporting that could develop benchmarks for real losses in the future. How do we do this? Similar to financial audits conducted by accountants, the American Water Works Association free software program compares the amount of water going in to the amount of water going out. Estimated volumes of losses due to leakage and poor metering and billing issues can be quantified through this water audit process. And these are standards that have been established and are recommended for North American water providers. The water provider industry must be accountable by employing sound, reliable water auditing with validation as a standard practice in order to improve our efficiency in water loss. In Tennessee, they required utilities a threshold in water loss and in data quality every 3 years. But this was largely self-reporting. There was no validation behind it, so there was no accountability. And as you can guess, many of these water utilities met those thresholds because there was no accountability. As I mentioned before, the Colorado Water Loss Initiative is a great framework that we have already in place. They provide voluntary, comprehensive training and technical assistance across Colorado to water providers. And this could serve as the validation arm for the utilities that would have to report under this mandate. And now you may be thinking, well, we have a way to measure it. So why does it take so long to get there, right? In computer science, we have this concept called garbage in, garbage out. And put it simply is if we put poor, unreliable information into our solution, we're probably going to get a poor or unreliable result, right? And from 2018 to 2020, the Colorado Water Loss Initiative reported almost 50% of the original water audits. They were incomplete in their reporting. So for many first-time auditors, the completeness and trustworthiness of the available data is not there. There's data quality for 20-some inputs in this water audit, and within those 20 inputs, you can have quality issues in each and one of them. Another key finding in the Colorado Water Loss Initiative program was that only 15% of participating providers did any annual calibration in their production meters. So technology plays a big role, right, in having good data quality, but only when that technology is tested, monitored, and frequently tested. Yeah. If there's no record keeping and the numbers are never checked, you could be collecting bad data. It's the operational processes and record keeping and organizational best practices that promote better data quality. Only then can we start to analyze areas of concern from that data, and then we can do the field work necessary to assess a course of action. Then the appropriate leak management program can be put in place in an economically justifiable and appropriate, mindful way to the resource, right? And so what is the benchmark we can look at? There is no such thing as a perfect distribution system. There's going to be some loss in the system, regardless of how well you manage it. Between the years 2000 and 2010, a lot of legislation across other states was percentage-based. And the American Water Works Association has denounced all percent-based metrics as they have been deemed inconsistent and unreliable as performance measures. So what does a percentage-based metric mean? Let's look at an example. If you look at 10% water loss, right, as a requirement. Let's say a provider has 100 units of water, and let's say it leaks, it has a water loss of 10, right? 10 over 100 is 10%. So that's the initial condition. Now, let's say this water provider brings on a brewery like Coors, and they require 100 units of water. Now, their requirement is to supply 200 units, and they still have the same level of leakage at 10 units. So 10 over 200, that's 5%. In a percentage base, they've lowered their water loss, right? But in reality, they've done nothing. So this is a great, if you want the garbage in, garbage out concept to sink in, this is a great real world example of garbage in, garbage out. And then you had places in California in 2004 that mandated a reduction in their supply as the droughts hit. And so now you have these water providers, right? You have a lower demand or supply of water, and you still have the same level of leakage. And all of a sudden, these percentages jump up, right? And they're saying, well, wow, we have a water loss problem. No, you have the same problem you had before. Now, just because of the demand, it's a problem. So individual targets make sense as benchmarks. The California has actually done better work since then. They actually mandated this annual reporting policy in like 2015. And since then, they've been developing a benchmark. They've been looking at gallons per connections per day as one of their benchmarks. And this is the most thoughtful benchmark. It allows you to compare different utilities of different sizes and different resources in a comparable way. Of course, that could be different for Colorado as we transition into this space. And so, yeah, that's what the science has to offer, right? But like many complex issues, this is not a one-person solution, not a one view solution. We need others to come together. And so I also propose to create an American Water Works Association Rocky Mountain section of a water loss collaborative. This would allow states like Wyoming and New Mexico to also come together and work on this problem. I would like to thank everyone here, and a special thanks to Kelly, Kevin, Isabel, and Reinhardt. I would also like to thank Senator Hansen and Senator Rankin for the opportunity and the experience to be here, and to Peter for making this a very good experience.
I think it's back to kind of the density of policy. I'm not sure I think they captured what I guess is as a matter of state policy. What do you think we should do next?
Yes, I'm sorry, I kind of ran over this. Yeah, so this mandate would require the reporting providers that fall under the Colorado Conservation Board's jurisdiction to report, right, through the American Water Works Association audit. And then they would have to be validated, right? It could either be third party or through this Colorado Water Loss Initiative framework that we already have in place. They could serve as the validating arm for that.
And then we talked about some of the software options that are out there. What was your sense of how widespread are being used now? Is there a huge gap there? Like, I'm guessing.
Oh, absolutely. So this is an issue because water providers have a lot to deal with, right? They have EPA regulations, they have to test constantly, they have to think about future demands and make that investment, and it's very complicated operation, right? And so the last thing they're thinking about is a water loss management program. Yeah.
Hear that there's cost associated with additional metering devices and maintenance devices. Is that good? Is this the cost for you guys to do an actual measure?
So, okay, the way once the water utility does start looking at water loss management, the way it's thought about, it's between these apparent losses, right? And these apparent losses happen because of meter inaccuracies. So that's a direct revenue loss from the customer, right? Real losses that happen physically, these are viewed as cost saving expenses. So the financial incentive is to go after the apparent losses first, right? Like it's the operational cost just significantly lower, and they're lower than the sale price, right, of water when you're selling it. So yeah, it's more of an investment, and really the technology is not that expensive. Really where the biggest cost comes from is the like once they figure out where a leak is, it's the repair and replacement, especially the replacement portion, right? It's a big capital investment. Yeah.
How are these different losses compared to each other? In terms of amounts of water?
In terms of amount, yeah. So the real losses is where the real volume of water is being lost.
Oh,
Like,
no, I understand.
yeah.
Would one of these be significantly greater than others? Like how much would apparently be lost as opposed to actually lost?
Yeah,
It's hard to get numbers.
it's hard to get numbers, especially like I said, like the data collection portion is just not there, right? Like, yeah, it's not, there's not enough providers doing. I mean, the water loss initiative program is a voluntary program, and they had 56 participants out of the 500 water providers here in Colorado. So it's a very low percentage. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a matter of the conservation or the water conservation board. I wouldn't know. I would have to, yeah, we would have to ask them. I would like to also add that some unintended consequences I see from this this mandate would be it could exacerbate the problem, right, in some providers. Water loss management is very complicated. I'll give you an example. Just pressure alone is one of the factors that contributes to water loss, right? And pressure, right? Right now, the way to go about it is very reactive, right? You see a hole, you plug it, another hole happens because pressure, and then another hole, and all of a sudden you're standing on 1 feet, right? And so there's these other better technologies to handle that pressure management, but this newer technology can also cause strain on the system. So it's very hard to manage, and it can become complicated really quickly. That's why another big part of my proposal is to create this collaborative, right? We need financial advisors. We need engineers. We need policymakers to be in the process. So, yeah.
I think we have a short break now, right?
Yeah, copy rate, so we keep that. Yeah, so we're starting with Holly at 11.